Um, sorry about my videos being cut short for this past few weeks, due to the fact that I was posting 5 to 6 videos a day, but lately it's been 2 to 3 at most in a week, or with an occasional couple in a day because of my work schedule outside of my YouTube job. So so the story I'm going to talk about today is called abortion and authoritarianism. But and then it says but why are women's freedoms threatening the male supremacy? Now the notion that men are superior to women is the root of all human inequality, and that's why the women must fight it. Basically, now will America's future be one of democracy and a woman's control over their own bodies, or one of authoritarianism where we're forcing them to get pregnant and forcing them to have the kids? These are two issues that are most motivating Americans to vote for Democrats in the rapidly approaching midterm election, and it's far more intertwined than is generally recognized. Now, at a time when right-wing extremists are hell-bent on making American states, or as many intend the whole nation, and they want to turn it into the fictional Republic of Gilead, it's appropriate to turn to Margaret Atwood. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to say this one name right, but I might mispronounce it. Now, when talking about tyrants and dictators like Adolf Hitler and Nikolai Ceausescu, not sure if I said that last name right, but they have often dictated the terms of fertility, and they criminalize those who do not comply. She pointed this out back in 2017. It's no accident that Napoleon banned abortion. He said exactly what he wanted offspring for. He called it cannon fodder. Fucking lovely, don't you think? Speaking of authoritarian regimes, Atwood also said this in 2020. What it comes down to is this: that they assert their right to control reproduction, and they assert their right over people's bodies. All totalitarianisms, no matter what they say their aims are, and no matter what's on the flag, they all have in common the rollback of women's rights. Historian Ruth Ben-Ghiat she concluded a transnational and transhistorical study of authoritarian regimes, and she makes the same point. Control over female bodies, she writes back in her 2020 book, Strong Men, Mussolini to the Present, is invariably among the goals of the insecure males who call themselves by that name. Now, to try to understand this and to try to overcome this, both the treatment of women as property and the basis of authoritarianism, we must dive into the deep history of humanity, and when we do so, we find that those two evils emanate from the same fucking source. It is more than mere coincidence that the desperate, redoubled quest to outlaw abortion had gained traction during an era in which women have achieved a greater degree of anatomy in other areas. The underlying question is not whether a fetus is considered a person, but rather it is whether a woman is a person or simply property. Now, the oldest and most consequential question in American history is the deep front of the struggle to control women's bodies, which is why it is so crucial to the self-doubting men who turn toward authoritarians. Now, it is often cited and correctly stated that enslavement is the original sin of America. Now, less recognized is another foundational condition shaping much of recorded history and our lives today. Sexism is the original sin of humanity. Misogyny is the gateway drug to all other hatreds, all other relationships of dominance and subordination. The belief that men are superior to women is the model on which all other vertical divisions, like race, class, nationality, master-slave, religious hierarchies, and so on, have been constructed on. The subordinate position in these relationships is always depicted as corresponding to women. Now, let's go back to 1975 for a minute. At least a year. I wasn't born that year. But let's go back to 1975, when Alice Cooper was starting off singing and rock and roll. And Alice Cooper had released a song called Only Women Bleed, which, believe it or not, hints at the origin of what is at stake in the struggle over a woman's right to control her own body. The foundation of the conviction for thousands of years that he got the power and she got the need is the erroneous idea that men have the seed and women's purpose and need is to take that seed. Now, a very deep history lies beneath that subject. To understand this, we need to go back to what can accurately be termed the seed time of sexism. Now, creative power had presumably been seen as female in most societies over the vast eons in which our distant ancestors lived as hunter-gatherers and they were dependent on plant and animal food and animal food that was produced by nature. Terminology like Mother Nature and Mother Earth are remnants of that belief. Now, men appeared to have little or no role in reproduction at that particular time. Now, a striking example of that way of thinking is nearly a century ago, anthropologist Phyllis Caberry had tried to explain this role that men have in creating babies to a group of indigenous women in Australia. And one woman responded that she had proved that men had nothing to do with making new life because her husband had died many months ago before she gave birth. Another woman summed it up secondly, saying that was nothing, basically, that men could do on that part. In addition to being seen as the possessors of the power to create life, women in most hunter-gatherer societies also co-providers through the collection of plant food. Were also co-providers through the collection of plant food. So these roles appear to have resulted in women having a rough level of equality with men in many of these societies. The development of agriculture, in all likelihood by women, more than 10,000 years ago, began a mega revolution that radically altered human life. Agriculture led to both animals and women being domesticated. Increased food supply made population growth possible, and women spent more of their lives burying and raising the children. But when the plow was introduced in some areas roughly 6,000 years ago, men began planting seeds in the rutted ground. A seeming correspondence was noticed. The furrowed soil resembled a woman's vulva, and it occurred to men that planting seeds in a groove in Mother Earth seems analogous to a man planting what came to be called semen, which is Latin for seed, in the groove between the labia of a woman. This correlation came to be taken as an operational equivalence, and it overturned the understanding of which sex has creative power as readily as a plow overturns soft most oil. This is an old poem, and yes it is, and these were words from that poem. The words were, "Who will plow my vulva? Who will plow my high field? Who will plow my wet ground?" And this was in a poem called "The Courtship of Inanna and Dumuzi." It's a Mesopotamian poem that dates back to the year 1750 BC. Now, men were elevated to the all-powerful creators, authors of new life, and so those with authority. Now, women were reduced from being thought to possess sole power to create new life into the counterpart of dirt, a place for men to plant their seeds. The common reference that continues to this day to women who do not conceive as barren is a reflection of the belief that they are soil. Now, human gametes are microscopic, and the sperm is even smaller than the egg. So semen, however, is visible, and it's obviously the case that a woman becomes pregnant only after the semen is planted in her. And yet, for those who thought so much about the view that semen is the seed of new life, there are very few difficulties that need to be explained away here. Now, one is that women who also produce a visible fluid, and its discharge ceases during pregnancy. But wouldn't that indicate that menstrual fluid also contains something necessary to the creation of new life? The other is that offspring sometimes resemble their mother. How can that be if the woman provides nothing to the new life except a place that's analogous to soil where the generation can occur? Back in the 4th century BCE, the explication on female inferiority in the generation of animals, Aristotle sought to answer those questions. But back in a convoluted argument, he had basically achieved his objective of propping up the belief that men are the sole authors of life. Hippocrates had previously hypothesized that each sex provides life-giving material. Aristotle rejected this idea by taking it as axiomatic that it is impossible that any creature should produce two seminal secretions at once. So he followed up that the female does not contribute any semen seed to generation. Menstrual fluid, according to Aristotle, he considered menstrual fluid to be weak, and a powerless concoction that merely provided the lifeless material to which semen gives life. A woman, he would continue on to declare, is merely an infertile male who lacks the power to concoct a seed. The female is, or as you like to put it, the female is as it were a deformed male, and menstrual fluid is an impure form of semen lacking only one constituent, the principle of soul. This argument seemingly solved the problems Aristotle had set out to address, but according to him, he believed that a woman cannot produce new life. But if she provides the matter that will become a child when it is given life by a man, then of course it could resemble her. But if the material given life by a man is necessary, that seemed to explain why menstrual discharge ceased during pregnancy. Now, the reversal of reproductive power based on the seed metaphor, which is so central in human history, is that it merits capitalization, and it can be found in numerous ancient texts, and here are a few examples. In Genesis 13, God, the visible ferryman in the sky, tells Abraham, "I will make your seed like the dust of the earth." Um, Another one is, the mother is no parent of that which is called her child, but only the nurse of the new planted seed that grows. This is what Aeschylus said to Apollo proclaim in Eumenidus, which is circled back to 458 BC. The parent is he who mounts. In Sophocles' Antigone, which is dated back to about 442 BC, when an astonished Ismene says to Creon, "What, you'd kill your own son's bride?" the king calmly responds, "Absolutely, there are other fields for him to plow." Your wives are a place of sowing of seed for you. This is verse 223 of the Quran, and it instructs men, "So come to your place of cultivation however you may wish." The evil effects of taking this metaphor literally have been monumental on a scale similar to those that flowed from accepting the story in the second and third chapters of Genesis is literally true. In both cases, those consequences are centered on seeing women as inherently inferior. Now, considering women as the functional equivalent of tilth and the prepared soil ready to be seeded, it would classify them as property, real estate in which men grow their crops of children, but property owners have rights. Property implying that which is property or properly or rightfully owned does not. Now, viewed in the light of the seed metaphor, planter was an especially appropriate term for American enslavers. Many of them were planters of their seeds and enslaved women, using them as fields to which to grow a cash crop, which meant more enslaved human beings. Now, I consider a woman who brings a child every 2 years as more profitable than the best man of the farm. This is what Thomas Jefferson had wrote back in 1820 of the value of enslaved women, and what she produces is an addition to the capital, while the laborers disappear in mere consumption. The improvement of the microscope in the 17th century and beyond made possible the identification of two components in sexual reproduction. The functions of sperm and egg were still unclear. The ovum was seen through a microscope in 1827. The fact that the woman produced ovaries did not necessarily mean that she was a source for life. The egg could readily be seen as the container of the matter to which Aristotle had contended the man's seed gives soul and life on. So indeed, after sperm had been seen under microscopes, the already existing ideal of formalism, which held that organisms grow from pre-existing tiny versions of themselves, had crystallized into the concept that the homunculus, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, the little man as people refer to it, was inside the sperm. It wasn't until the 1870s that it began to become clear that new life resulted from the combination of life-given material from both parents. It's therefore ludicrous to claim that the traditional Christian view was that life begins at conception, since through the first nearly 2 millennia of the Christian era, no one clearly understood when or how conception took place. So although educated people have known for well over a century that the seed metaphor is not right, it goes on like a zombie, eating the brains of people across modern cultures, much as it did in the past, and insidiously germinating the poisonous misconception that women are and ought to be property for the use of men, which I don't see it as that way, because they're technically not to be treated. They're technically not property at all. But the message to women is unmistakable. You're basically the message that we're sending out to them is your only purpose is to carry the man's seed. That is denominating, degrading, and debilitating and authoritative in a word, basically lesson that has been taught to women for thousands of years, and it's the cracking foundation beneath the authority that Roman Catholic bishops, evangelical pastors, and other insecure men fear is being usurped. Authoritarianism is an extreme manifestation of the power relationship based on the never to be questioned inequality between men and women. This is the motive force in the rise of authoritarian rulers and would-be rulers around the world, from Russia to Hungary to Turkey to Brazil to the Philippines to the United States. A man claiming unlimited power over others asserts that he is in the position of God, which he's not, and the author to whom all others are subordinate. Authoritarians are males terrified that they aren't real men. Ironically, the weak men, who are so attracted to these strong men, apparently believing that some of the authoritarian leaders' supposed virility will be infused in them if they submit, they offer themselves to him, or unconsciously putting themselves in what they classify as the woman's place. Subordinate, powerless, submissive, obedient, serving, groveling before the man. They act like Ilsa in Casablanca when she says to Rick, "Oh, I don't know what's right any longer. You'll have to think for both of us and for all of us. Now, please, dear leader, tell me what I must think and do." Now, picture Mike Pence and other members of Donald Trump's entourage telling him that serving him was the greatest honor they could imagine, which was really fucking pathetic if you ask me. But they were presenting themselves for the man to plant his potato manhood in them. Now, this deep history explains away the issue in Dobbs vs. Jackson, and it was seen by many anxious males as monumental. Now, if male dominance is to be maintained, women's reproductive freedom must be curtailed. It isn't really about choice as such, but it's about denying the right to it's denying the woman the right to make the choice. Now, back in ancient Roman times, for example, they were now back in the ancient Romans, for example, were pro-choice, but that choice was solely for that of the man. His supposed creations were his and not the woman's. Farmland has no say in whether the farmland has no say in whether crops planted in it will be allowed to grow or be pulled out or plowed under. The patria potestas, the authority of the father, was absolute. Thou shalt not pull up what man has planted. That sentence sums up the position of many churches today, and alas, the radical right-wing majority in the Supreme Court. And in the decades since women began moving toward equality, male supremacists have intensified their efforts to put them back in their place. Accurately described by Atwood in The Handmaid's Tale as two-legged rooms, that's all. Sacred vessels, ambulatory chalices, as George Carlin put it back in the 1996 routine. Pro-life is anti-woman. Those who oppose women's control over their own bodies believe a woman's primary role is to function as a broodmare for the state. After Kansas voters overwhelmingly rejected removing abortion protection from the state constitution, one post-mortem used seed metaphor terminology to describe the position of forced pregnancy advocates. They want to treat a woman's body like it's a high-yielding 160 acres of Kansas farmland. This is what Preeti Gulati Cox wrote. Presumably without being aware that she was doing so, she pointed out that those who sought to deny women's ownership of their bodies are applying Thomas Jefferson's 1820 argument on the value of enslaved women. The higher the yield, the higher the value. The connection between authoritarian regimes and the use of women as fields in which to grow new members of the favored race is undeniable. Cradles are empty and cemeteries are expanding. This is what Benito Mussolini had warned back in 1927. Language often echoed by the American right today. The entire white race, the Western race, could be only submerged by other races of color that multiply with a rhythm unknown to our own. One of Mussolini's programs was called the Battle for Babies. It presented awards to prolific women for being such rich, productive soil, if not quite in those terms, while banning abortion and contraception. If that sounds familiar to Americans in 2022, it fucking should. On July 21st, 96% of Republican members of the House of Representatives voted against the legislation to protect access to birth control. Now, the American right-wing extremists have chosen the racist and misogynist Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban as their model. He and others on the radical right in Europe and the United States have taken up fear-mongering about the great replacement of white Christians by others, whether identified or not. In July, Orban gave a speech in which he declared, "We mix within Europe, but we don't want to be a mixed race." One of his own top aides characterized it as a purely Nazi diatribe worthy of Joseph Goebbels, yet the American radical right's admiration for Orban remains undiminished. The Conservative Political Action Committee, CPAC, still welcomed him to speak at their gathering in Texas early back in August. Now, this is easily overlooked, but much of the replacement fear authoritarians fire up among insecure men is not only that they will be replaced by people of other skin colors, but cultures or other religious faiths, but also that they will be replaced by the original other women. Now, CPAC also said back in the 2022 meeting in Budapest, so back in May, Matt Schlapp, who was chairman of the American Conservative Union, said there that one way to reduce the supposed replacement of white people in the United States was to grow our own population by outlawing abortion. This is an interesting twist on the use of enslaved black women as soil to grow more people who would be classified as black and owned by the seed planters. Now, white supremacists want to use white women to grow crops of free white children. The color of the soil has changed, but the treatment of women as owned real estate remains a constant. Forced pregnancy fits into the Great Replacement hysteria, not only on the premise that it will only increase the white population, but also in that, again, classifying women primarily as soil will remove many of them from the workforce as competitors within men. On the day the Dobbs decision was announced, a Republican candidate for lieutenant governor of Minnesota explicitly argued that abortion leads to women having careers. I doubt that. Our culture, Matt Burke pronounced, loudly but also stealthily, promotes abortion, telling women that they should look a certain way and have careers and all these things. Forced pregnancy in this worldview can help put women back in their proper place. I doubt it. Serving and servicing men, not replacing them. Kinder, Kucha, and Kirchi, children, kitchen, church, as the Nazis defined women's roles, and of course opening their furrows for men to plant the seeds that will produce more and more white babies. Now, let's go back to 1960 and a slogan that called the Question Authority. The 1960 slogan, Question Authority, is key to the attainment of equality by women, and nothing questions male authority as much as women having the power to control their own bodies. Preventing women from deciding whether to continue a pregnancy is basically the, not sure I'm going to say this right, sine qua non of the regime of male dominance and female subordination. Acceptance of that right recognizes that women and men are the co-authors of new life, and they have equal authority. Equality of the sexes is the foundation of an equal society. As long as women are seen as inferior, authoritarianism remains a danger. Now, the war on women's choice is Armageddon for insecure men, because if women have control over their own bodies, they are their own bodies. That is, they are equal human beings and not property owned by men. That way lies the unraveling of male dominance, and so it is on the issue that they call pro-life. In truth, forced pregnancy, where self-doubting men are terrified of equality with women, have dug in for their last stand, because the concept that men are superior to women is the foundation for all other claims that one's classification of people is superior to another. To question male authority, it endangers the whole edifice of inequality that has been raised upon. Now I've read the Bible, and the Bible is 100% full of shit, but this is something that is in the Bible. Deuteronomy 22:29 declares that if a woman is raped, she must marry the rapist that raped her. Now, Italian law had held this agreement. So basically, Italian law had this requirement: matrimonio riparator, which means rehabilitating marriage, and it's to restore a raped woman's reputation. And well into the second half of the 20th century, after the Dobbs decision in many states, or even a 10-year-old girl may be required to carry and deliver the child of her rapist. The message to women in the abortion laws passed in several states over the past several years is essentially the same as that in Deuteronomy. When you're fucked, you're fucked. Anxious, fragile men are determined to keep it that way. Women and secure men must work together to establish, once and for all, that women are not real estate, but they're equal human beings in their own right. But one place to start is by mobilizing to ensure that those who are unequivocal in their affirmation that women are free human beings have a political power to pass a federal law protecting the women's bodies from government control. Women being slaves of the state is what authoritarianism looks like. And to surrender women's freedom is to surrender all our freedoms. So if you like the video, you can give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You can also hit the notification bell so that you know when a new video comes out. And if you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube. And for just as little as a few bucks a month, your donation can help go a long way, and thanks for listening.